Alright, man, peace. So on March 18th, a so-called young black man by the name of Stephon Clark was gunned down by the Sacramento police force, who were responding to a report that there was a young man vandalizing property in the neighborhood. In the aftermath of the young man's death, it was revealed that the officers allegedly mistook his cell phone for a gun. This event has instigated the reemergence of the Black Lives Matter, aka the Black Lesbians Matter movement, which took it upon themselves to bar the paying customers who were hoping to attend the Sacramento Kings game that night from being able to access the venue. Thereafter, the owner of the Sacramento Kings, Vivek Ranadive, issued a statement before the game in an attempt to appease the attempts to cause discord. So anyway, they're going to talk about it. I'm going to chime in.
This is SportsCenter right now. I'm Will Reeve. On Sunday, Sacramento police officers shot and killed 22-year-old Stephon Clark in his grandmother's backyard at the end of a chase in which officers mistook Clark's cell phone for a gun.
Brothers, let me say this very quickly. I'm going to wait for more details on this issue to arise, but let me say this, please, especially for brothers who come on my channel who are 14, 15, 16, 20 years old, 21 years old, 22 years old. What groups like the Black Lesbians Matter movement want to do is they want to play up the self-victimization mentality that is currently part of the so-called black man's programming. The reason why they want to do that is so that they can keep you feeling mentally and spiritually impotent, so that you feel powerless. So now every time you walk down the street, you're supposed to be scared that a police officer is going to shoot you. That's not what life is about. Living in fear is not what life is about. And groups like the Black Lesbians Matter movement are fearmongers. Once again, they want to use you to attain their own ends, which is a quasi-black matriarchy with lesbian leadership. That's all it's about. And for those of you who don't believe me, go on the Black Lives Matter website. They'll tell you that themselves. They try to play up this nonsense, and they want to make every so-called black man out to be a victim and someone who should be running for his life every time he sees a police officer. Let me say this, brothers, and I may lose certain people with this, but when you decide to engage in criminality, and I'm not saying that Stephon Clark was necessarily engaging in criminality, but when you decide to embark on that life choice, the legacy that you leave is going to be as a criminal. I don't care how they try to dust it off, how they try to clean it up, claim that he was a great father, he was loved by his grandparents, by his brother, by his daughter. None of that matters now because he's gone. And if they come to find out that he was just walking home from the corner store, or if they find out that he was vandalizing other people's property, either way, he's gone. So that's why I try to implore brothers when I make these videos to always think about the decisions that they make. Life is not about living in fear, and they're trying to create this dynamic amongst so-called black men that they should be scared of everything and everyone, like they should be scared of the cops all the time. When you're out in the street, you should be moving with a purpose, not just standing around seeing what you can get into or trying to act as if you have no choices and no options in your life. All life is a series of choices, man. None of us are perfect. But what they're trying to do with the so-called black men, they're trying to engineer you to believe that you should be scared of everyone and everything, and that you should throw your lot in with a group like the Black Lives Matter movement, which is all about empowering lesbians over you and homosexuals over you. They want you to fight their battles and their wars for them, so that once they have taken the role that has been promised to them by the liberal Caucasians that are bankrolling them, they're going to kick your ass to the side. I promise you that.
Citizens' reaction to that killing had a direct impact on the only pro team in town. A day after police released body cam footage of that fatal shooting, protesters organized a march Thursday that...
Now look at these simpletons. Is this supposed to be what so-called black leadership is aspiring to? I guarantee you, if you were to ask any of these people here who are participating in this quote-unquote protest what their overall plan is, they have none. They have none. Brothers, at the end of the day, the so-called black man and his image is based around his physicality as opposed to his cognitive function. They don't want you to be valued for your brain. And to be quite frank with you, when they put forth images like this with idiots like this, that's to foster that image of the so-called black man, that reputation that he's all brawn and no brains. Because these people are fucking morons. And I know certain people are not going to like that. I don't give a shit. All the Black Lesbians Matter movement is about is creating a red herring, a distraction, so that the real leaders of the so-called black community are rendered null and void, because you're expected to co-sign all this nonsense. That's why you got to have all these idiots on the internet. Whenever you don't co-sign this nonsense, they want to call everybody a coon, because they clown asses want to aggressively beg the so-called white man for a hug, as opposed to doing the things that need to be done to improve the so-called black community, because they don't have the discipline to do it. None of these motherfuckers out here have discipline. Look at them.
That began at City Hall and culminated outside the Golden One Center with...
Look at this dude. Would you trust this dude to do anything that will lead to progress in the so-called black community?
Where the Kings were scheduled to host the Hawks at 7 p.m. local time. The protesters blocked fans from entering the arena. Ultimately, after a nearly half-hour delay to tip-off, the Kings beat the Hawks in front of around 2,000 fans.
So their plan was, because they're upset that Stephon Clark got gunned down by the cops, as opposed to them going out and protesting in front of the police station, they want to get in front of the Sacramento Kings venue and stop the paying customers from being able to access what they paid for. And that's why I call them a Discordian group. They're Marxist. Underneath all that bluff and that fluff, they want you to hold hands with everyone and everything. Just dress up in black and cause as much drama as you can cause.
As the rest were turned away for their safety. Elsewhere...
Let me say this, brothers. As I've stated, I'm going to be following this Stephon Clark case, this issue, as more information is revealed. But to be quite frank with you, once again, the onus that I'm going to be putting on cases like this and issues like this is for the so-called black man to not put himself in those positions, in those predicaments. You could try to claim how, when they arrest Caucasians, they just shoot them in the leg. But when they arrest a so-called black man, they shoot him 20 times. This is not our rest, man. This is not our kingdom. This is our captivity. And if brothers came to understand that and grasp that, then they would find themselves in less of these situations. Stop worrying about what the so-called white man thinks about you and how his police force treats you, because if the so-called black man was sharp, once again, we could have our own police force. But before anybody can even think about something like that, the so-called black man must change how he thinks about himself. And stop embracing all these destructive images for yourself like a damn thug and a drug dealer. All this nonsense. Niggas sitting around in their house playing video games and smoking weed all day. And I know certain people are not going to like that. Oh, well.
So that's what we need to do right now, because while that's going on in Sacramento last night, the Kings' home game with the Hawks was delayed 19 minutes. When protesters surrounded the Golden One Center last night, a massive crowd formed a human chain to protest the fatal police shooting of Stephon Clark, an unarmed black man who was on a cell phone in his backyard. Kings owner Vivek Ranadive spoke before the game.
We here at the Kings recognize that we have a big platform. It's a privilege, but it's also a responsibility.
Now look at what this owner is doing. Because he's trying to protect his investment, he feels the need to make this grand decree in front of the sparse crowd and to set up all the Negroes that he's paying as props standing behind him. You can tell by the looks on their faces that they don't want to be there. They don't want to be a part of this. All they want to do is engage in their profession. But because the Black Lesbians Matter movement and the little silly, weak-minded Negroes that follow them are engaging in this discordianism, is putting everyone in the position where they have to take stands on things that they really don't know enough about. No one even knows right now if Stephon Clark was engaging in criminality. And I'm sure that many people will say, well, that does not give the police the right to shoot him 20 times. You have to understand something. And once again, a lot of people are not going to like this because a lot of so-called black people don't believe in consequences for your actions. When you make the wrong choices throughout life, that can lead to repercussions that may be extreme. It's very, very unfortunate. Very unfortunate. That's why I've stated that I'm going to be following this case. Because so-called black man, you can't continue to live your life thinking that you're supposed to be treated the same way as your quote unquote oppressor when you're in your oppressor's kingdom. We have to build up our own kingdom. And the first way that that's going to happen is that you have to start conducting yourself like a king and being honorable. It's not honorable to run around smoking drugs, selling drugs, vandalizing the property of the people around you, robbing your own, killing your own. It's not honorable. So we'll see what happens here. Either way, it's not going to be a good outcome because they either they shot an innocent man, or the brother made a series of bad decisions that led to him getting gunned down by the police. And it's very unfortunate. But our people have to change their mindset. And so a lot of people are like, well, how come? What about the white man? Look, man, my channel's not about the white man. If you want to come on my videos and think that you're going to hear me talk about what white people need to do, you're not going to hear that. Because I don't give a fuck about them, to be quite honest with you. You might, but I don't. I don't give two shits about them. And a lot of people might not like that. Oh, well. If I'm home and I know that there are certain rooms in my home that need to be cleaned, that's what I'm going to pay attention to. I'm not going to be concerned with my next door neighbor's front yard. That's their problem. My problem is my home, not their home. Now, once my shit is clean, if I'm noticing that there is a carryover effect from how they're treating their home, then I have to speak to them. But our people want the so-called white man to change his conduct because they think that that's going to make their lives better. Your life starts with you. And that's it. And you're going to find that once you take on that mentality, a lot of this ulterior shit that they try to plague the black man with and infect his mind with, this is how you're going to become happy. All that shit will go by the wayside, man.
It's a responsibility that we take very seriously. And we stand here before you, all young, black.
Now look at this lady to the left. She's standing there like, what is this really about? What is going on here?
Black, white, brown, and we are all united in our commitment. And we are...
No, sir. You're united in your commitment to continue to make money. There is no unity going on here in modern day Babylon, aka America. There is none, other than the superficial unity of carnality and the veneration of Heru, aka Tammuz, aka Asar, Saturn, etc. Living the culture of Thelema, do whatever you feel like doing. That's really what unifies people here in America, and unifies is in quotes. There's no unity here. You just understand that if you don't nip this in the bud right now, it's going to affect your bottom line. Let me rewind it all the way back so I can get it from the start.
We here at the Kings recognize that we have a big platform.
And you know, before I let him speak, let me rewind it back just a little bit more.
In his backyard, King...
Now look at this. This is supposed to be a Black Lives Matter rally. Pay attention to the people in the crowd. Right there in the front, you see an older so-called black man with one of those pro-black Afrocentric necklaces on, you know, the red, green, and black. He's there talking to what looks like a very young Asian woman. Let's move on to the next scene here.
King's owner Vivek Ranadive spoke.
And then, of course, they're all throwing up the so-called Black Power fist, which is really the fist for Marxism. A lot of them don't know that.
Spoke before the game.
Now look at this. So-called black man, pay attention to this. Do you see this right here? This is supposed to be a Black Lives Matter rally. But there goes the liberal black woman clasping arms with the young liberal Caucasian woman. Once again, brothers, this is not about Stephon Clark. This is about attention mongering for the liberal black woman. Much like the Never Again movement was an attempt at attention mongering for young females, adolescent females, and adolescent homosexuals. But I'll be covering that in another video pertaining to that rally. But once again, how are you worried about the upliftment and the maintenance of so-called black men, so-called black males, or so-called black people who are getting gunned down by the cops. And the first thing that you're thinking about is unity amongst all, even if your contention is, well, everybody who cares is welcome. It's not just about emotional care. You have to get your own house clean before you worry about building bridges with anyone else. You have to get your own house clean before thinking about building bridges with anyone else. That's why I tell you, brothers, this so-called Black Lives Matter, really Black Lesbians Matter movement is all one big morass. It's a big morass. It's a cesspool of confusion.
Again.
We here at the Kings recognize that we have a big platform. It's a privilege, but it's also a responsibility. It's a responsibility.
Look at De'Aaron Fox over there looking like a teenage black Wolverine. My man, like 21 years old, he already got 2 big bags under his eyes. Like, what the hell have I gotten into?
Quality that we take very seriously. And we stand here before you, all young, black, white, brown, and we are all united in our commitment. And we are going to work really hard to bring everybody together to make the world a better place.
Bullshit. You're going to try to bring everyone together to make sure that your revenue keep flowing in.
Starting with our own community.
So here it is. In Sacramento, the issues underlying the protest. Max, what's your reaction to how Vivek handled the situation last night?
Well, let me answer before Max Kellerman. I thought that Vivek Ranadive did exactly what he needed to do to make sure that his money continues to flow in. He understands that this is a powder keg. And very quickly, he's come to terms with the fact that due to the fact that he owns an NBA franchise and the NBA is a woke league, he has to take a woke stance. Woke meaning what? He has to appear to be sensitive to many of the liberal ideologies that are embraced by the so-called black community. He understands that the so-called black community is dominated by the woman. Even when you look at the little photo in the lower left-hand corner of the screen, once again, what do you see? You see the young liberal black female right next to the young liberal Caucasian female, so on and so forth. Once again, brothers, that is what these Marxist movements are all about. It's about the empowerment of the female and the homosexual over you. That's what it's always been. They use you for the front line because they want you to take the bullets.
I think he handled it very well. Will, I think, and Stephen A., I think he handled it very well. And I've been very critical of him as an owner. I don't think he's a good one.
No, he's not a good owner. He's a terrible owner. But he's smart enough to understand that he's made an investment and he's not going to allow any of the normal nonsense that occurs between the police force in this society and a so-called black man who's not good enough to play for his basketball team to stop his show. Because that's pretty much how a Vivek Ranadive looks at so-called black men, I'm sure. I know a lot of people are not going to like that. But he looks at so-called black men as either you're good enough to play for my basketball team or you just don't matter to me. But I have to act like I'm sensitive to this issue because I can't allow this to mess with my money.
But here we see, and Stephen A., this speaks to the owners that you spoke to in the NFL who believe it's affected their bottom line, and they may be right, but they also may be wrong. The evidence is not definitive one way or another.
Nonsense. The evidence is definitive. Without a doubt, the NFL ratings were down, which means that their revenue was down in regards to ticket sales. You had lowered attendance throughout the NFL last season due to the Marxist protests that were instigated by Colin Kaepernick the previous season.
And here's an example, and by the way, in the NFL, it lines up with the owner's personal preferences, and that's really the point. They're they're gatekeepers, they're in positions of power, and their personal preferences can influence the way they interpret events.
Is it their personal preferences, or is it their understanding that their constituency is comprised mostly of conservative Caucasians from middle America who are letting them know that they don't like what they're seeing, Max Kellerman? But because you're an employee and not an employer, you're a worker and not a boss, the bottom line does not really resonate with you because you receive a paycheck. You don't write checks. Once again, very similar to Ms. Jamel Hill and Mr. Michael Smith. It's easy to get on TV and talk shit when you don't have an understanding of the bottom line being affected. So I told you guys for a very long time that they were not going to be allowed to subsist on pretty much rubbing the faces of the middle America Caucasians, the conservatives, who comprise the majority of the viewers of the NFL. They were not going to be allowed to continue to rub their noses in it, which is what Jamel Hill and Michael Smith were doing on a nightly basis on their version of SportsCenter. Now, Max Kellerman, he plays the role of the super liberal Caucasian Jew on TV, and Stephen A. Smith deals with it because, that's part of the paradigm that he's trying to recreate due to the void that was created by Skip Bayless leaving. Unfortunately, Max Kellerman oftentimes does not quite know what he thinks, but he knows what he's supposed to think because of the role that he plays. That's why they have to bring in someone like a Will Cain, who's more definitive and can provide some counterbalance to Stephen A. Smith, and also provide some counterbalance to Mr. Max Kellerman, who, to be quite frank with you, comes off to me as someone who's always on a buzz. He clearly is on some type of methamphetamine, allegedly. But, it is what it is.
Oh, this affects my bottom line. Well, maybe your reaction to the protests affects the bottom line. For example, look at the way Renadive just handled this situation.
Well, it's easy for him to handle a situation like that because, once again, he understands the culture of the NBA is woke. It's woke. The NFL is not woke. So you're truly criticizing the NFL owners for not going against the culture of the league. Once again, when you're a business owner, you must understand who you're marketing your wares to. The main constituency of the NFL are conservative Caucasians in middle America. The main constituency of the NBA is mostly around the coastal regions, the West Coast, the East Coast, and the southern border. Now, of course, you have pockets in middle America, of course, and the fan bases of both leagues do intersect in a particular way. But there's no doubt that when you understand who the NBA markets their league to, as opposed to who the NFL markets their league to, like the NBA is never going to fall in league with the U.S. military. Just like you're not going to see the NFL proactively have ads to promote being more open-minded towards sexual equality, meaning people who are homosexuals or lesbians. They're not going to do that because that's not what their constituency is. That's not their market base. So Max Kellerman is pretty much asking the NFL owners to turn against their market base, and that's not going to happen. That's not realistic.
Ask yourself, how does the NBA handle those situations, and how are they perceived even in terms of social justice issues versus the NFL? And then ask yourself, which league is on the way up and which league is on the way down? I'm not suggesting that that's definitive evidence either. I'm just suggesting there's evidence on both sides. I like the way Renadive handled this situation, and I do believe it counts as some kind of evidence on the side of the ledger.
Well, you can't claim that it counts as some type of evidence when you have already stated point blank that you don't know what you think. You don't know if there's proof that the NFL is going down because of the protests. You don't know if it's going up. You don't know if it's because of the protests. You don't know if it's not. You're just talking. So, in other words, you don't know what you think or why you think it. You just know what you hope. And what you hope is that the NBA continues to climb because you know that they're woke. So just like as I've already stated, that when you look at their commissioner, how could they not be woke? Their commissioner is clearly a homosexual, allegedly. Google Adam Silver at the gay parade. If that motherfucker ain't gay, I don't know who is. Like, he makes Liberace look like a manly man.
Where you say, well, okay, the NBA handles this stuff better than the NFL, and it's also good for business.
Max, let me, first of all, I agree with you about Renadive, and I applaud the way that he handled this situation. But work for me for a quick second by just answering a couple of these questions quickly. You say the NBA is on the way up, the NFL is on the way down. Is that accurate?
Yes.
That's what he alleges.
When you talk about NBA players, haven't they played a significant role in the peace that has been conveyed and displayed in terms of the league and the players itself being in concert with one another? The players have had something to do with that. What did you say?
Yes, that's because the commissioner has extended olive branches and has done a very good job of helping along that capacity.
Well, it's also because they haven't had any plants in the NBA that have been programmed to sow discord like Colin Kaepernick was and like Michael Bennett is. That's also the main reason, Mr. Max Kellerman. Yes, the relations and the rapport between the NFL Players Association and Roger Goodell has been strained, but it's because the league, the NFL league, is much stronger than the NBA league. It just is. So they can afford to be more hardliners than the NBA. Right now, the NBA is building, so they want to work more with their players so that they can try to catch the NFL. Plus, once again, their brand is different. It's been different, particularly since Adam Silver has taken over. Why is that? Because, as I've already stated, he's clearly a homosexual, allegedly.
Well, wait a minute. We could say that. We could say that, but what I would say to you in return is that Michelle Roberts, the executive director of the Players Association, in concert with Chris Paul, the president, in concert with guys like LeBron James and others who are the face of the league, were cognizant of affecting their bottom line, this cash cow, and the ultimate impact that they had. So rather than alienate the communities at large out there, what they did was work in concert with the league, be of one light, be of one mind, be like-minded, come together as one, to let everybody know that we're in this with the same reasons, with the same purpose, and the same agenda. So
that's true, Stephen A. Smith, but there was really no need to build bridges when the bridge was already there. Meaning what? They already share the same ideologies. It's not like Adam Silver has to convince LeBron James and Chris Paul that, hey guys, I'm going to extend an olive branch to the homosexual and lesbian community. What do you guys think? I mean, no disrespect. People might not like this, but most of your higher level NBA players are pansexuals anyway. Whether you like that, understand that, believe it or not, most of your higher level NBA athletes are boule, and a lot of them are pansexual anyway. So they pretty much agree on that already. All right. So it's not like there has to be a lot of bridge building there. And it may have been a totally different story had David Stern still been the commissioner. People act like the NBA has been so woke for so long. David Stern has understood very well how to market the NBA, and Adam Silver has carried it along. But right now we're in the woke era. We've been in the woke era now for probably about the last 5 or 6 years. And it really got ratcheted up in 2016 after Ali died, and they started to push and promote a lot of the debacles that have been occurring between so-called black men and the police via social media.
So all I'm trying to say to you is this. They did exactly the kind of stuff that I'm alluding to the NFL players should have done. Instead of just being out there and protesting as individuals and being divisive in the eyes of some of your patrons out there, what the players in the NBA, in concert with the league and the owners did was come together in a way that galvanized people as opposed to divide them. And look at how they're thriving.
Well, once again, Stephen A. Smith, you're on the opposite end of the spectrum of Max Kellerman. Max Kellerman wanted the NFL owners to alienate their constituency by becoming woke. You're trying to congratulate the NBA owners for understanding their constituency. It's all about business. If you're an NBA owner, you can't come out and say, I don't care about Trayvon Martin, or I don't care about what went on with Stephon Clark. You know that the NBA is perceived as a black man's league. Even though the NBA is 75% so-called black and the NFL is 70% so-called black, the NBA is the league that's perceived as being a so-called black man's league. So if you're an NBA owner and you decide to get into the industry of the NBA and you want to own a franchise, you must understand that. You have to understand that. You can't be a conservative NBA owner, at least not in how you treat your players and not in the image that you project towards your fan base. It's just not possible. That's not shrewd. And you see what happened to Donald Sterling, when he tried to maintain a staunch anti-black male stance. He had to be omitted from the NBA. And he really was sacrificed to introduce Adam Silver as the woke commissioner. I believe that behind the scenes, he and Sterling had a deal. And there was a lot going on there. As you can see, Donald Sterling, Adam Silver, Sterling Silver. But they had a behind the closed door meeting to assist Donald Sterling, number one, in making $2 billion in revenue from selling the team, and also raising the esteem of Mr. Adam Silver and gaining the trust of a lot of the woke black players in the NBA. So it worked out for everyone, that whole Donald Sterling situation.
Listen, I understand your point.
Well, I'm not losing their message.
I'm not losing their message. I'm not saying you and I are on the same page about that, but I will take what you said and deal with that as though I agree, like as though that's true. Let's just assume that what you're saying is 100% true. Then I would say, why is it that Chris Paul and others in the NBA have been able to act in concert with the league to do good, and in the NFL these players haven't? And I would suggest that it might be because Adam Silver and the NBA has done a very good job of making the players feel that they are partners, that they have an equity stake. And the NFL does not treat the players the same way.
It's not about how the players are treated. It's about understanding your market. I've already stated this numerous times over the course of this video. The reason why there's a divide between the understanding of Stephen A. Smith and Max Kellerman is because neither one of them understand that the owners in both sports are treating their respective sports, their respective leagues, according to their market. The NFL has a conservative market. The NBA has a liberal market. Both owners are appealing to their market, and it's going to alienate your players based off of what the ideological stances are of your players. The so-called black man in general embraces liberalism. So if you're a liberal in a conservative league like the NFL is, it's going to lead to consternation between the players and the owners. The NBA is a liberal league, so that is why they get along better. It's as simple as that.
May I offer this quickly, Stephen A.? Could it also be that the NBA and the NBA players watched what happened in the NFL first and had the benefit of seeing a way of protesting that did interrupt business and chose a different path?
Yeah.
You make a semi-valid point, but I don't think that they had to watch the NFL. I think that the NBA players look at the NFL players as meatheads who are pretty much just stuck with having to deal with a situation that is not going to jibe with their overall ideological leanings or their doctrinal beliefs. So in other words, they just have to collect a check from conservative men, even though they embrace liberal philosophies, and they just have to swallow it. So I don't think that the NBA players ever are going to look to NFL players for any type of inspiration, either good or bad.
That absolutely is true, Will, but let me just throw a ribbon on it all. It can also be that the NBA recognized what it had working for them because they negotiated a collective bargaining deal that they found doable and plausible and beneficial to themselves, whereas the NFL players have a problem with the deal they negotiated and found different ways to vent about it.
Right.
Well, look, I'm already on record as stating that Colin Kaepernick, the reason why he's trying to pursue that collusion case against the NFL is because he's hoping that if collusion can be proven on the part of the owners, that it will cause the current collective bargaining agreement to be null and void and bring true chaos into the NFL so that the Players Association can then go about trying to renegotiate a new deal, which pretty much will leave the NFL in a state of limbo. Because if the NFL players are allowed to attempt to renegotiate that collective bargaining agreement with the NFL owners, they're going to try to go ham with it, and the NFL owners are going to batten down the hatches, and you won't see any football probably for 2 years.
Right. In fact, this is not their real issue. There are other things that collectively will bargain that are their real issues, and they're using these other issues to vent about it.
So you're saying don't kill the golden goose, and the point is the players in the NBA feel the goose is more golden for them than the players in the NFL do.
That's correct.
No matter how golden the goose is, you don't cut off your nose to spite your face. Especially if you don't have any other ways of making money. Max Kellerman, you know that better than anyone. You're just on TV like most liberals talking shit and trying to get people to do things that you yourself wouldn't do. As most super liberal media pundits do. And once again, when I say liberal, for people who may be new to my channel, I'm not talking about politically. I'm talking about ideologically. Okay? I'm not talking about politically. I'm talking about ideologically. Liberalism is just another way of saying Marxist. All a liberal is a Marxist. All a Marxist is a Luciferian. All right? Bottom line.
Or they had the benefit of hindsight. By the way, it's definitely been handled differently. Coming up, we got...
But anyway, that's it on this issue. We'll see what happens as the Stephon Clark case progresses. Well, like I stated, brothers, please understand that sometimes the repercussions for your actions when you make bad choices is harsh. Peace.